So once you move into the main project details area, you'll enter the project name, choose the currency of the project that it will be in, and then we move into what type of project you are looking to build. Now this is quite important to understand. So first of all, pre-investment tariff consultancy. This essentially is shown here. It allows you to just look at a client site and to build up the tariffs for the client site, build up the demand profile for the client site, and then essentially cut short the inputs so that you can rapidly get to a point where you can start to understand the results for that particular site. So essentially what that will do is then not analyze energy generation, not analyze energy storage. It will simply look at how tariffs and demand interact at the client site currently so that you can then present to your client what's going on right now. And that can be useful because then it can enable a discussion in relation to what you might want to look at doing. We then go back to the second choice, which is then behind the meter, which some people also call microgrids. So essentially behind the meter, we have a client site with demand, and that client site will have demand, it will have tariffs, but what we're going to analyze, if you choose this, is then what happens if we put generation and or energy storage behind that connection to the grid at the client site, and how will they interact to reduce demand, reduce the cost of tariffs, but also through on-site use, but also then what will they generate from revenue by exporting any excess energy back to the grid, and potentially any other revenue from balancing services and the like. We then move on to the third option, which is in front of the meter when there's no demand, and this is really potentially one of the simplest areas in terms of what you've got going on. So here you have no site demand. Okay, you have no site demand, no industrial or commercial or domestic setting. It's purely generation and or energy storage, and those are interacting and exporting straight to the grid and generating export revenue or other revenue from balancing services. There is also import potentially to charge the energy storage when the generation is not producing, and there will be specific tariffs associated with that. So in front of the meter, if you're looking at large-scale solar, wind, and or energy storage without any demand, and what that means. We then might move on to the final choice, which is essentially in front of the meter and virtual demand. So this is essentially a virtual private wire, and this is essentially where we have our grid connection for generation or energy storage. Again, as before, exporting to the grid, generating revenue and potentially other revenue from balancing services, and being potentially charged to charge the battery up. But it is also in this sense where you are then potentially offsetting or compensating that energy against a remote client demand. And so when you generate, that will reduce or mitigate or compensate that remote demand, and there'll be a PPA for that virtual use, which will then build into that revenue model. So these are the four models that we have set up at the moment for GridMAP. If you've got any questions about them, please give us a call. But hopefully this video has helped you to work out which one you'll be building. Thanks a lot.